Good morning, this is pre-algebra for Monday, March the 30th. Today we are not going to be using our book. What we're going to do is prepare and review for our test. A few of you had, I went through your quizzes and your homeworks, and I've pulled out some types of problems that several of you missed. And we're going to kind of go over those in preparation for our test. So our test is not today. Our test is coming, and we're just going to take some time today and review. Okay, so the first thing we want to talk about is a ratio problem. If you had to, the problems are not in your book, so you have to listen to me, okay? By the way, number one. Number two, you want to make sure you write these down. You want to make sure that you keep these problems because you're going to need them when you do your quiz in just a little bit. Okay, the ratio of a number of birds to beast was 3 to 7. How many beasts were there if there were 750 birds? Okay, we know that our ratio is 3 to 7. What does the top represent? It represents birds. The bottom represents the beast. When I write my second ratio, it must be laid out the same way. So that means on the top, the number has to represent the birds. In this case, it said that there were 750 birds. We do not know how many beasts there are. That's what we're looking for. So we're going to make it an X. Now, let's cross multiply. Because when you have two ratios that are proportion, the way you solve a proportion problem is to simply cross multiply. So 3 times X is 3X. 7 times 750 is 5,250. Now, we know how to solve this equation because there are two rules to solve an equation. One, do the opposite of what the equation says. Number two, whatever you do on the left, you must do on the right. That is correct. So we're going to divide this by 3 on both sides. This cancels, leaving us an X. And then we say 5,250 divided by 3. Well, 5 divided by 3 is 1. With 2 left over. 22 divided by 3 is 7. That's 21, leaving us 1. 15 divided by 3 is 5, and then 0. So if there were 750 birds, that means there's 1,750 beasts. If this problem does not make sense, or if you have a question, write a little note to yourself out to the side so we can help you make sure you understand. The next problem I want you to look at is this one. I have 0, write this on your paper, 0.000, 3 zeros, 913. I want you to write this number in scientific notation. As you know, the first rule is, in scientific notation, the numbers must be between 1 and 10. In order to get this number to be between 1 and 10, I have to move my decimal point over here. So I have 9.13. Now, I'm going to multiply that by some power of 10. How do I know? Count the number of places you move the decimal. 1, 2, 3, 4 places. So this answer up here is a 4. The question is it positive or is it negative? If this is positive, when you multiply this out, your decimal point goes to the right, okay, making this number larger. If it's negative, the decimal point goes to the left, making the number smaller. Do you want to make this number larger or smaller? Well, we want to make it smaller. So it is 9.13 times 10 to the negative 4th power. Let's look at the next one. This next story problem is about a rate problem. And I really think most of you missed the problem that missed it. Not all of you missed it, but those of you that did, I think you missed it because you didn't read it carefully, because your answers were just shy of finishing the problem. Listen to the problem. Eric drove 240 miles to a park in 4 hours. Write that rate for me. He went 240 miles in 4 hours. Okay? Then it says, if his return trip took 3 hours, what was the difference in his rate? Well, How far did he drive on the way home? Well, he still had to drive all of the miles. He still drove 240 miles. But how long did it take him? Only 3 hours. So write your 3 hours. How fast was he traveling when he went to the park? We're simply going to divide 240 by 4. When we do that, we get he's driving 60 miles per hour. What about on the return trip? He drove 240 miles, but he did it in 3 hours. He was driving 80 miles per hour because 240 divided by 3 is 80. Now, several of you stopped at this point. Some of you told me the answer was 60 miles per hour. Some of you said, no, the answer is 80 miles an hour. You didn't finish the problem. Go listen carefully to the story problem. Eric drove 240 miles to the park in 4 hours. If his return trip took only 3 hours, what was the difference in the rate? The question is, what's the difference? Difference means to subtract. Difference in the rate. So, one of them is 80. Subtract out 60. The difference in his speed was 20 miles per hour. That was what I was looking for. Okay? I think, again, it was not that you didn't know how to do the problem necessarily as much as it was you didn't read the problem carefully. Okay? Let's look at the next one here. We have evaluate. Oops, looks like I've erased the problem somehow along the way. So let's evaluate. Here's your problem. If x equals 6, y equals 3, and z will equal 1/9. Okay, so x equals 6, y equals 3, z equals 1/9. Here's your problem. What if you have x, y, z plus y squared plus x to the y power minus xy. Okay, let me read the problem while you're writing it down. xyz plus y squared plus x to the y power minus xy. Once you write a problem down like this and you're trying to evaluate it, first write the problem, second you do what? You substitute. So let's go back and substitute. X is 6. When you have 3 letters next to each other, it means to multiply. So we'll put a raised dot. Y is 3 and z is 1/9. Now, because that one's a fraction, I'm going to go on and put those over 1 as well. Okay? Plus y squared. Well, y is 3, and we're going to square that. Then we have x, which is 6, to the y power. Well, y is 3, so we're going to put it to the 3rd power. Minus x, which is 6, times y, which is 3. So, we wrote our problem. We substituted our problem. Now we simply solve it. Okay? So, here, I'm going to cancel my 3 and my 9, make my 9 a 3 and my 3 a 1. Oh, I can cancel this, make this 3 a 1 and the 6 a 2. 2 times 1 is 2. Plus 3 squared, or 3 times 3, is 9. Then we have 6 times 6, which is 36. And then 36 times 3 is 216. 6 times 3 is 18. Now, we're going to start on the left. Since it's all addition and subtraction, start on your left and work our way right. 2 plus 9 is 11. 11 plus 216 is 227. 227 minus 18 is 183. Okay? So when you're doing these problems, all you need to do is write down the problem, substitute your numbers, and then solve. The next problem I want us to look at today is a decimal problem. It's a what is this decimal? Well, guys, we have this pattern that we've been using all year. A fraction times the of equals the is. Remember, the decimal is the same thing. Decimal times the of equals the is. Remember, a decimal and a fraction are the same thing, just by two different names. It's like whether I call you by your first name, if I say Dana, or if I say Hernandez. She's the same person. It's just what do I call her, okay? Now, today's problem is, what is the decimal of 930 is 558, okay? So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna write down our pattern. We're gonna say the decimal times the of equals the is. Okay, now I don't know the decimal, so I'm gonna substitute my decimal with the letter N. Okay, next I know that the of is 930. So put 930. I hope you're doing these on your paper with me. The whole idea is to help you get a good grade on your test. Okay, the is, it says, what is the decimal of 930 is 558. Okay, n times 930, well, I can get rid of that 930 by simply multiplying. All right, I mean to divide. It says to multiply, so I'm going to divide. I'm going to divide this side by 930, and whatever I do on the left, I have to do on the right. So I'm going to divide that side by 930. All I have left over here is an n. Now, I have 558 over 930. I could go through the process of reducing it if I wanted, or I could just simply divide it. If I'm going to divide it, because I'm going to have to divide eventually because I need a decimal in my answer, whatever's on the top falls inside the box. Okay, so I'm going to put 930 on the outside. Well, obviously 930 will not go into 558. It's not supposed to because it's a decimal. So add a decimal point and annex a 0. Bring your decimal point up. How many times will 930 go into 5,580? Well, I know that 5 times 9 is 45. That's close, but probably not quite enough. 9 times 6 is 54. That's really close. So let's try 6. 6 times 0 is 0. 6 times 3 is 18. 6 times 9 plus the carry is 55. So n equals 0.6. It equals 6/10. Okay? Let's look at our next problem. I've already have it written on the board for us. It is 18x minus 14 equals 27. This is what we call a two-step equation because we have to do two math processes before we can get to x, okay? So what can I get rid of? The first thing I want to get rid of is the constant. It says to subtract 14. I'm going to do the opposite of what it says. It says subtract, so I'm going to add. So I'm going to add 14. But rule number 2, whatever I do on the left, I have to do on the right. So I'm going to add 14. These are going to cancel, leaving me 18x equals 7 plus 4. I'm going to carry my 1. So I have 3, 4, I have 41. Okay? So I have 18 over, oops, I added instead of subtract. That's right. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm supposed to add. Okay? I'm going to add. Okay, so I added 27 plus 14 and got 41. Now what am I going to do? I'm going to divide. I'm going to divide by 18. Okay? But I have to divide both sides by 18. This cancels, leaving me 41 over 18. Now I can see, can I reduce that? I cannot. So that is my final answer. X equals 41 over 18. Let's look at, for just a moment, I wrote the problem on the board different than I wrote on my paper, so it was a little confusing for a second. I want you to open your book for me. Open your book to problem set 67. Open your book to problem set 67. I have drawn the diagram for us today, but I know that in your book it's probably a little better drawing than mine. Okay, we're gonna look at this. I probably should just make it bigger. Okay, we're gonna look at this diagram. If this is 30 and this is 20, and we're gonna pretend these are square, okay, because we all know Mrs. Turner can't draw, okay, and out to this, we have a radius of 10, okay? I wanna find the perimeter of this. How do I do that? Well, I have to, perimeter means the distance around, so I have to add these sides. That's easy enough, but what do I do with this? How do I find that? How do I find the length of a chord or part of the semicircle, okay? So perimeter really means all of the sides added together. In this case, side 1, 2, 3, and then this thing on the end, okay? That makes 4. So the perimeter equals side plus side plus side plus side. Now those first 3 sides are simple. 30, 20, and what's this? 30. So we're gonna put 30 plus 30 plus 20 plus, how do I do this? Okay, how do I find, this is actually finding the length of the semicircle or the perimeter of the semicircle, okay? How do I do that? Well, I'm gonna take pi because it's a circle, okay? We're gonna take pi times diameter. Now it's a semicircle, so we're gonna divide by 2 because we only want half of the circle, okay? Now, let's go ahead and do this. If we have 30 plus 30 plus 20, that equals 80. That's easy enough. Now let's look at this. What if we have pi? Pi is 3.14. The diameter of this is what? If you said 10, you are wrong. It's not 10, but it's what? It's 100. Why? Well, because 10 is only from the middle to this side, but diameter is all the way across. Oh, I'm sorry, it's 20, not 100. Okay, it's 20. Okay, so then we're going to divide it by 2. So 80 plus, now we're going to say 3.14 times 20. 3.14 times 20. Then we're going to divide it by 2. We're going to get 31. Let's see, let's go here. Let's go. 30, I'm gonna write this out for those of you that are still struggling. Okay, we're gonna go over here because we're gonna divide this. That's what, 2 times 2, we have 6, okay? Bring it in 2 places. So we have 62.80, but remember we have to do this. Divide by 2. Several of you did not divide this by 2. When you divide this by 2, you're gonna say 6 divided by 2 is 3. 2 divided by 2 is 1. Bring our decimal. 4 divided by 2 is 4, okay? That is the step that several of you forgot. You just simply didn't divide it by 2. Okay, I'm trying to read my notes as to what you did wrong as well as tell you how to fix it, okay? Now, for the perimeter, we're simply gonna add this. 80 plus 31.4 is 111.4, okay? 111.4. Now, if you looked at your book, it told you that this was in meters. And we know that perimeter is simply a number of meters, okay? So perimeter is simply adding the sides. I think where most of you went wrong was simply you did not divide by the 2 on this, okay? Now, the next thing we want to do with the same diagram, I want you to find the area, okay? Now, in order to find the total area, I have to break this down into shapes. And I have 2 shapes. First, I'm going to have the rectangle. So I'm going to say the area of the rectangle plus the area of the semicircle, okay? So the area of the rectangle, what's the formula? Length times width. What is the area of the semicircle? What's the formula? It is pi times radius square divided by 2. Pi times radius square divided by 2. Now let's go back and substitute our formula. Area equals length times width. It's going to be 30 times 20. plus pi, which is 3.14, times the radius, which is 10. But remember, we're going to square that radius and divide it by 2. Okay? So, when we come down to the next line, we're simply going to start solving our problem. 30 times 20 is 600. Now, we're going to say, before I can multiply 3.14, I have to square. So, square 10, that is 100. So, 100 times 3.14, and then I'm going to divide it by 2, okay? So it's going to be 314 when I multiplied it by 100. Now I'm going to divide it by 2, and I'm going to get 157, okay? So now all I do is add this together. Area equals 757. I'm looking at area. That tells me that my units has to be square units. Let's take this problem one step further. It's not in your book. What if I asked you to find the volume of this shape? How do you find volume? Volume equals what? The total area times the height. That's all you have to do. So your area is 757 square meters times the height. And just for the sake of having a measurement, let's make the height 2 meters. Okay? So now all I'm going to do is multiply. 2 times 7 is 14. 2 times 5 plus 1 is 11. 2 times 7 plus the 1 is 15. What do I do about meters squared times meters? It becomes meters cubed. So the volume is 1,515 cubic meters. All I had to do was find my total area, multiply it by the height. Now, we're going to try just a couple more. We're about out of time, and I'd like to do one more problem before I send you off to do your work. Okay? Let's look at 2 1/5 times 3 1/4 divided by 5 1/2 divided by 6 1/2. First thing, I'm not going to do the whole problem because of time. All we're going to do is make all of these improper. So we're going to say 11 over 5 times 13 over 4 divided by 11 over 2 divided by 13 over 2. Now what do? Well, this is a multiplication problem. So we're just going to write it down. 11 over 5 times 13 over 4. But this is a division problem. So I'm going to keep my 13 over 4, change my sign, and flip my second number. Now keep the second, this is a division problem, so keep the first one, change your sign, and flip the second one. Question: when you are reducing, can you use any numerator and any denominator? Yes, you can. This 13 and that 13. This 4 becomes a 2, this 2 becomes a 1. Oh wait, this 2 and this 2 can cancel out, making 1s. This 11, this 11. So now I have 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. 5 times 1 times 1 times 1 is 5. Your answer was 1/5. Okay, this has just been a review. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to do your homework assignment. Do not throw these papers away. There's a reason, and when you're taking your quiz today, you will see why you need this on there, okay? All right, have a great day, guys.